There is a question that rises quietly from the early pages of Genesis, and it does not leave easily. It appears after the first field has been stained with blood, after the first brother has fallen, after the first murderer hears the voice of God and learns that judgment will follow him into the open world. Cain, standing under sentence, says something that seems almost simple at first. He says that whoever finds him will kill him. And with that one line, the silence around the story begins to widen. Who is Cain afraid of? Who are these unnamed others who might find him? Where do they come from? And how does the same man, cast out as a wanderer, arrive in a land called Nod, take a wife, father a son, and begin to build a city? For many readers, that is where the true disturbance begins. The murder of Abel is terrible, but the deeper unease comes just after it, when the text moves forward without pausing to answer the questions modern readers most want answered. Genesis is often read too quickly at this point, either with complete confidence or with immediate suspicion. Some read the chapter as though every detail were obvious and fully explained. Others read it as though a gap in explanation is itself proof that the story is broken apart. But Genesis does not behave like either of those readings. It is not casual with its words, and it is not anxious to satisfy every curiosity. It tells us less than we want, but not less than it intends. That is what makes this passage so enduring. The mystery is not merely a puzzle about population numbers. It is a window into the kind of book Genesis is and the kind of truth it is trying to tell. The story of Cain is not written as a modern historical reconstruction. It does not stop to map every household, name every daughter, or explain every social development. Instead, it moves with great seriousness through themes that matter more to its own purpose: worship, envy, blood, curse, exile, mercy, building, memory, and the strange survival of humanity east of Eden. To see that clearly, we have to slow down. Before Cain becomes the man with a wife and a city, he is the son of Adam and Eve. Before he fears the unknown other, he stands beside a brother. Before he enters Nod, he hears a warning. And before Genesis confronts us with the possibility of a wider world, it confronts us with something even more intimate and more devastating: the corruption of the human heart within the first family itself. This matters because the story is not really driven by the question, where did those people come from? That question is real, and we will face it honestly. But the story itself is driven by another question, one that is older and heavier. What happens to the world when sin no longer speaks only in the serpent, but begins to speak in a son? Cain is not introduced as an outsider, nor as a monster from the start. He is born into hope. Eve says after his birth that she has gotten a man with the help of the Lord. The first child carries the sound of acquisition, perhaps even triumph. There is life after Eden. There is continuity after judgment. The human story has not ended at the gate guarded by flame. It has begun again in sorrow, but it has begun. Then Abel is born, and the brothers stand before us almost without ornament. One keeps sheep, one works the ground. The occupations are plain, but they already echo the larger world of Genesis. The ground has been cursed because of Adam. Labor is now burdened. Bread will come through sweat. To work the soil is to live close to the memory of judgment. To keep flocks is to live with another part of creation, moving across the landscape that lies outside the lost garden. Nothing yet requires tragedy. Nothing yet demands blood. But the chapter moves with a gravity that suggests something fragile has already entered the human household. The brothers bring offerings to the Lord. Abel brings the firstborn of his flock and of their fat portions. Cain brings fruit of the ground. The text does not initially explain everything it expects us to notice. It simply tells us that the Lord had regard for Abel and his offering, but for Cain and his offering he had no regard. Why? The passage does not reduce the answer to a single formula. Later readers have often tried. Some focus on the quality of Abel's offering, the firstborn and the fat portions. Some focus on the disposition of the heart. Some notice that Hebrews speaks of Abel offering by faith. All of these may help, but Genesis itself turns immediately toward Cain's response. He becomes angry. His face falls. and God speaks to him before the murder, not after it. That warning is one of the most searching moments in the chapter. If you do well, will you not be accepted? And if you do not do well, sin is crouching at the door. Its desire is for you, but you must rule over it. Sin appears here, not merely as an act, but almost as a creature waiting at the threshold. It is near. It is poised. It is ready to master the man who will not master himself. Before Cain becomes a fugitive in the outer world, he is already endangered in the inner one. The first exile in this chapter is not geographical, it is moral. That is where the story truly begins to deepen. The unresolved details about Cain's wife and city matter, but they come later. The primary shock of Genesis 4 is that evil is now domestic. The breach that began in Eden has moved inward, from the garden into the family, from the commandment into the heart, from rebellion against God into violence against a brother. And so if we want to understand the silence around Cain's later life, we must first understand the burden of what he has already become. Genesis is not merely asking us to solve a missing person problem in early human history. It is asking us to watch the first family become the site of the first murder, and then to consider what kind of world grows from that wound. That world, when we finally see it, will contain fear, wandering, unnamed people, a wife never introduced, a city raised by an exile, children who shape the tools of culture, and a descendant who boasts in violence more openly than Cain ever did. The question of who lives in the land east of Eden is real, but it is surrounded by an even larger question. What sort of civilization can be born from a man who walks away from the presence of the Lord? That is the road we now follow, and it begins in a field with two brothers, one warning, and a silence that will echo far beyond the place where Abel falls. Chapter 2: The Ground and the Brother. The story of Cain and Abel is often remembered as the Bible's first murder account, and that is true. But it is also the Bible's first great meditation on nearness. The brothers are near each other. They are near the ground. They are near the place of worship. Cain is near repentance, near warning, near restraint, and yet all that nearness does not become peace. It becomes proximity to disaster. Genesis tells the story with a restraint that makes it more severe. Cain speaks to Abel, his brother. The text in some ancient witnesses includes an invitation to go out into the field, but the Hebrew text as commonly received leaves the speech itself unrecorded. That omission is striking. We are told that Cain spoke, but not what he said. The silence matters. It draws our attention away from dialogue and toward deed. Whatever passed between them, the field becomes the place where inward disorder takes visible form. Cain rose up against his brother Abel and killed him. There is no ornament in the line, and there does not need to be. One sentence is enough. The first child of the first couple becomes the first murderer. The first death in Scripture does not come from age, illness, or accident, but from violence within the family. Human history outside Eden opens not with simple endurance, but with fratricide. Then comes the voice of God. Where is Abel, your brother? The question sounds familiar because it echoes the garden. God asked Adam, "Where are you?" He asked Eve what she had done. Now he asks Cain about Abel. The Lord does not ask for information he lacks. He asks in order to expose, to summon, and to judge. Cain answers with one of the coldest lines in the chapter. "I do not know. Am I my brother's keeper?" The irony is painful. Abel had been a keeper of sheep. Cain asks whether he is meant to be a keeper of his brother. In one sense, the whole biblical answer is yes. Not in the sense of control, but in the sense of responsibility. Human life was never meant to unfold as isolated self-assertion. The refusal to care for a brother is already a fracture of the created order. Cain's question is defensive, but it becomes prophetic in spite of itself. Scripture will spend centuries answering it. Then comes one of Genesis's most haunting images. The voice of your brother's blood is crying to me from the ground. The ground matters in this story almost as much as the brothers do. Cain is a worker of the ground. His offering comes from the ground. The ground receives Abel's blood, and then the ground, which had already been cursed in Adam's story, becomes the witness against Adam's son. In Genesis, creation is not morally indifferent. The soil does not speak with words, but it testifies. Bloodshed is not absorbed into silence. It rises as accusation before God. This is why Cain's punishment is described as it is. He is cursed from the ground, which has opened its mouth to receive his brother's blood from his hand. When he works the ground, it shall no longer yield to him its strength. He shall be a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth. Notice the pattern. Adam had been told that the ground would resist him. Cain is told something sharper. The ground will no longer cooperate with him at all. The man whose life had been tied to the soil now loses even that bitter intimacy. He becomes unmoored from the very sphere in which he had sought to live. His punishment is not only external judgment, it is the fitting unraveling of his own place in the world. This is why the story cannot be reduced to a curiosity about population. Cain's later fear only makes sense when we see the scale of what has happened. He is not merely leaving home, he is becoming a marked man in a moral universe. He has shed blood, defied warning, lied to God, and broken the bond of brotherhood. The earth beneath him has become testimony, and the labor that defined him has become barren. Yet even here the story is more complex than pure destruction. Cain says his punishment is greater than he can bear, or perhaps, depending on translation, that his guilt is too great to bear. The line may hold both ideas close together. He feels the burden of judgment, and he fears the consequences that will meet him outside the immediate scene of the crime. He says he will be hidden from God's face. He says he will be a fugitive and wanderer. And then comes the line that has troubled readers for centuries. Whoever finds me will kill me. The wording is important. Cain does not say Abel's friends or my brothers or my parents' future sons. He says whoever finds me. It is a wide expression. The text does not stop to define it. It lets the fear stand in open air. Some readers take that as proof that Genesis assumes a populated world beyond the immediate family. Others answer that Adam and Eve had many children over time, as Genesis 5 later says, and that the narrative has compressed events without concern for modern chronological detail. The canonical text can certainly support the existence of additional sons and daughters, even if it does not insert them into the story at the moment many readers would expect. But even if that is the explanation, the narrative still feels strangely spacious. It does not pause to reassure us. It lets the world seem larger than the frame. That effect may be intentional. The early chapters of Genesis often move this way. They present scenes with concentrated theological force, not exhaustive census records. Generations can pass in a few lines. Names may be withheld where modern readers would demand them. A figure may appear already situated in a world of labor, marriage, and settlement, without the kind of background explanation that later readers assume is necessary. This does not mean the text is careless. It means the text has other priorities, and those priorities become clear in what follows. When Cain fears death, God does not answer by explaining the human population. He answers by placing a limit on vengeance. The Lord says that if anyone kills Cain, vengeance shall be taken on him sevenfold. Then God places a mark on Cain, lest any who found him should attack him. The mark of Cain has been endlessly discussed, and wisely so, because the text never tells us what the mark looked like. It gives the function, not the form. It is protection, not approval, mercy within judgment, preservation without acquittal. Cain is not restored. He is not excused. He is not welcomed back into innocence, but neither is he abandoned to immediate retaliation. This is one of the first great paradoxes of Scripture. The first murderer becomes also the first person in the Bible explicitly marked for protective restraint by God. Justice remains, but it does not take the form Cain expects. That is the atmosphere we must carry into the next movement of the story. Cain leaves, but he does not leave an empty moral landscape. He goes under judgment, yet under protection. He is a wanderer, yet not annihilated. He is exiled from the presence of the Lord, yet not beyond the reach of divine decree. And it is precisely there, in that difficult space between curse and mercy, that the story becomes stranger still. For the man who says he will wander soon settles. The man who fears whoever finds him soon finds a wife. The man judged through the ground soon becomes the founder of a city. The field of blood does not remain an isolated event. It becomes the seedbed of a civilization east of Eden. Chapter 3. Whoever finds me. It is easy to hear Cain's fear as a practical concern and nothing more. He has killed his brother, and now he fears being killed in turn. But in Genesis, fear is rarely just practical. It reveals what a person believes the world has become. Cain's words expose how he now sees reality itself. The world is no longer a place where he can simply live. It has become a place where he may be found. That phrase matters. Whoever finds me. In Scripture, to be found can mean more than being seen. It can mean being exposed, overtaken, reached by consequence. Cain has already been found by God, even before any human avenger reaches him. The one who thought his act could remain in the field now learns that blood calls upward. The hidden thing is not hidden. The brother who is gone still speaks. The earth itself has become witness. So Cain's fear is both literal and moral. He fears other people, yes, but he also fears a world in which violence returns. The man who has broken the boundary of brotherhood suddenly understands how unstable human life can become once that boundary is broken. This is one of the dark ironies of the passage. Cain, who would not keep his brother, now wants to be kept from others. At this point, the reader naturally asks again, others who? And here we must move carefully. The canonical text gives us two facts that must be held together. First, Genesis 4 itself does not explicitly identify Cain's potential attackers or introduce his wife before mentioning her. Second, Genesis 5 says that after Seth was born, Adam lived many years and had other sons and daughters. This later statement shows that the family of Adam was not limited to the few named figures in the early narrative. The text leaves room for a growing human population, even if it does not narrate every birth as it happens. For many interpreters, that is enough. Cain's wife is understood as a close relative from Adam and Eve's wider family, and the fear of being killed is understood in the context of expanding generations over a span of time that Genesis does not spell out in modern detail. This traditional reading stays within the canonical frame. It does not require another human origin outside Adam's line. And it has the virtue of simplicity. Yet even if we grant that possibility, the chapter still feels deliberately sparse in its explanation. Cain speaks as though the reader is already expected to accept that the social consequences of murder will extend beyond the immediate four people most often named. The narrative does not stop to say, by this time, many children had been born. It does not name Cain's wife, or explain how long he wandered before marriage. It simply lets the world open around him. That narrative silence has led others, especially in later speculative traditions, to imagine a broader human backdrop. Some have suggested that the land east of Eden contained pre-existing populations not descended from Adam in the same way. This idea, often called a pre-Adamite theory, tries to solve every tension in one movement. If other people already existed, then Cain's fear, Cain's wife, and Cain's city all seem immediately explained. But that solution must be handled with caution. It is not stated in Genesis. It may answer modern questions, yet it also introduces new theological problems of its own, especially if it is used to separate Adam from the wider human story in ways the rest of Scripture does not support. It is better to call it what it is, a speculative attempt to fill a silence, not a conclusion plainly taught by the text. There is another possibility, less dramatic, but perhaps more faithful to the style of Genesis. The text may simply be compressing reality in order to foreground meaning. In other words, Genesis may know perfectly well that households grow, generations expand, unnamed daughters exist, marriages happen, and communities form. But because its purpose here is not to document every step in demographic development, it moves from the murder to the exile to the settled life of Cain, without pausing for all the transitions we would prefer. If that is so, then the strange spaciousness of the narrative is not a flaw. It is a feature. The Bible is showing us that once humanity moves east of Eden, life multiplies faster than the text chooses to explain. Sin expands, families expand, social worlds appear, the stage broadens. The story is no longer only about a garden and a couple. It is about a human race unfolding in history under the shadow of a curse. And yet, the most important detail is still not population. It is protection. God places a mark on Cain lest any who found him should strike him. The first murderer is allowed to live, not because murder does not matter, but because God will not let vengeance become sovereign. In the very first cycle of human violence after Eden, the Lord places a boundary around revenge. The blood of Abel cries out for justice, but that justice will not be handed over to unlimited human retaliation. This has deep implications. It means that even in a world already disordered by sin, God still governs the consequences of sin. The human story does not spiral without limit, even when it grows dark. Divine judgment and divine restraint appear together. Cain's life becomes a sign of both, and perhaps that is why the story refuses to satisfy our curiosity too easily. If the chapter stopped to explain every social detail, we might miss its deeper force. The real astonishment is not only that others may exist, but that the murderer continues under God's protection into a future he does not deserve. The mark of Cain is a terrible mercy. It does not heal the wound he made. It keeps him alive beneath it. From there, Genesis gives one of its most compressed and provocative transitions. Cain goes away from the presence of the Lord and settles in the land of Nod, east of Eden. The geography is simple, but the theology is immense. East of Eden is not just a direction, it is a recurring movement in Genesis. Humanity keeps moving outward from the lost center, away from the garden, away from direct fellowship, away from the original harmony of life and the God's immediate blessing. Cain's journey is part of that larger pattern. He is still within God's world, but further from the remembered place of innocence. And then, almost without warning, the wandering man stops wandering. He settles. This too is worth noticing. Nod is often linked with the idea of wandering, yet Cain settles there. The exile seeks permanence. The fugitive builds continuity. The condemned man begins a household. The one who feared being found becomes the founder of something lasting. How can that be? That is the question that leads us into Nod itself, where Genesis becomes at once more ordinary and more mysterious. For there we are told, in the plainest terms and with no introduction at all, that Cain knew his wife. The unnamed woman enters the story silently, but the silence around her is not empty. It reveals what Genesis is not trying to do, and what it very much is. Chapter 4, East of Eden. Few figures in Genesis are introduced more quietly than Cain's wife. She appears in a single line, without ancestry, without speech, without description, and without explanation. Cain knew his wife, and she conceived and bore Enoch. For many modern readers, that silence feels intolerable. The chapter has already raised enough tension with Cain's fear of other people. Now it moves even further, as though no explanation were required at all. A wife is there. A son is born. Life continues. The story advances. But before we decide what that silence means, we should notice something else. Genesis often withholds names when a person's identity is not central to the theological focus of the moment. Noah's wife is never named in Genesis. Many women who shape the story profoundly are introduced with little detail at first. Silence does not necessarily mean contradiction. Sometimes it means concentration. The text is fixed on Cain, his line, and what emerges from him. Still, the question remains valid. Who is this woman? The most traditional answer is also the most restrained. Cain's wife would have been drawn from the growing family of Adam and Eve, whose unnamed sons and daughters are later acknowledged in Genesis 5. This answer is not explicitly stated in Genesis 4, but it remains compatible with the canonical text. It assumes that the narrative has passed over years or decades without announcing it, which is hardly unusual in early Genesis. The text is comfortable with compression. Its concern is not modern chronology, but theological memory. Ancient Jewish traditions sometimes moved in this direction as well, though with greater imaginative detail. Later writings such as Jubilees and strands of rabbinic interpretation attempted to supply names, relationships, and genealogical clarifications that Genesis itself leaves unstated. These traditions are important as interpretation, but they should remain in their proper category. They are not the same as the text of Genesis. They testify to how deeply the question of Cain's wife troubled readers long before the modern world. Then there is the more speculative proposal that Cain entered a region already inhabited by people outside Adam's immediate line. This idea can sound compelling because it appears to solve several difficulties at once. Yet the biblical text never says the land of Nod was populated before Cain arrived, nor does it state that his wife came from an unrelated human stock. The theory may be interesting, but it goes beyond what the passage affirms. In truth, the silence of Genesis may be more revealing than either solution. The writer does not seem troubled by the absence of detail because the point of the story lies elsewhere. Cain's wife is not treated as a mystery to be solved. She is treated as part of the continuing human world beyond Eden. The narrative is not asking, how is marriage possible? It is asking, what kind of future takes shape when the first murderer is not destroyed, but allowed to live, marry, father, and build? That is why the setting matters so much. Cain settles in the land of Nod, east of Eden. Nod is a strange place name because it appears to echo the Hebrew idea of wandering. Whether the name carries that wordplay fully or not, the effect is powerful. Cain the wanderer settles in a place whose very name reminds the reader of unrest. He seeks stability in a land marked by displacement. He makes a home in the geography of exile. This is one of Genesis's deepest patterns. Humanity does not simply vanish after judgment. It continues. It marries, bears children, forms households, discovers skills, builds structures, and names places. But it does so outside the garden, outside the world as it was meant to be. Human life after Eden is real life. It is productive life. It can even be creative life. But it is never neutral. It is always lived under a memory of loss. That memory hangs over Cain's household from the start. He is not merely another father in a new land. He is a man who has gone out from the presence of the Lord. The phrase is heavy. Of course, no human being can leave God's universal sovereignty. But the story is speaking about more intimate proximity, about the relational nearness and favor that Cain has now forfeited. He still lives in God's world. He does not live in the same ease of fellowship. And yet, the passage resists simple moral flattening. Cain's household is not described as a wasteland. His wife conceives. A son is born. The child is named Enoch. There is continuity, memory, and intention. Even under judgment, life does not end. The biblical world is not divided into the pure who build and the impure who disappear. Instead, Genesis forces us to see a harder truth. Fallen humanity continues to create history. This becomes important when readers imagine that a cursed man should produce only visible ruin. Cain certainly does produce ruin. Abel's blood is proof of that. But ruin is not all he produces. He also produces family, settlement, and the beginnings of a social order. That is precisely what makes the story sobering. The line between culture and righteousness is not simple. People can create tools, homes, and communities without reversing the exile of the heart. Here we begin to see why the text is not eager to name Cain's wife or explain every missing step. Its subject is broader than one marriage. It is the mystery of human continuance under divine sentence. The question is not simply where did she come from? The question is, what kind of world does this marriage now belong to? A world east of Eden is not an empty wasteland, nor is it a restored paradise. It is a place where ordinary human acts continue in extraordinary moral tension. Men and women marry, children are born, names are given, yet beneath each act lies the unresolved fracture of the first rebellion and now the first murder. That is why the next line matters so much. It does not merely say that Cain fathered a son. It says that when he built a city, he called the name of the city after the name of his son, Enoch. In one sentence, The wanderer becomes a builder. The exile becomes a namer. The man who feared being found becomes the founder of a human place. And with that, the story passes from household to civilization. If the wife of Cain enters Genesis silently, the city of Cain enters with almost the opposite force. It changes the scale of the narrative. We are no longer only in the field and the family. We're in the beginning of urban life, social permanence, and collective memory. But that first city rises from a line already marked by blood. And that fact will shape everything that follows. Chapter 5. The City of Enoch. Few lines in early Genesis are as brief and as suggestive as this one. When he built a city, he called the name of the city after the name of his son, Enoch. It is easy to read past the phrase too quickly because the chapter moves on almost at once to the descendants who follow. But if we linger here, the scene becomes remarkable. The man condemned to be a fugitive and wanderer is now associated with construction, naming, and settlement. Cain does not simply survive his exile, he organizes life within it. What exactly does the text mean by city? That question matters because modern readers often imagine towers, walls, crowds, markets, and dense urban life the moment they hear the word. The Hebrew term can refer more broadly to a settled place, perhaps fortified, perhaps more modest than what the modern imagination pictures. So we should be careful not to impose a later metropolis onto the earliest pages of Genesis. Even so, the point remains substantial. A city is not a solitary hut. It is not merely a man and his wife standing in open land. A city implies continuity, households, boundaries, structure, perhaps defense, perhaps organized labor, certainly a settled social future. However large or small the settlement was, Genesis means us to feel its significance. Human life is no longer only dispersing in families, it is taking shape in places, and Cain names the city after his son. This is a profoundly human act. To build is one thing, to name is another. Naming turns labor into memory. It gives the settlement an identity that extends beyond the present moment. Cain, who has lost so much, now seeks permanence through lineage. If he cannot return to Eden, he can still leave a mark on the earth. If the ground will not yield to him as before, he can still build upon it. If he has gone out from the presence of the Lord, he can still establish a human presence in the land. There is something deeply poignant in this. Cain is guilty, judged, and displaced. But he is not inhuman. He desires continuity. He desires a future for his son. He desires durability in a world that has become unstable. The city is, in one sense, an answer to wandering. It is the human effort to create rootedness after exile, and yet that rootedness is haunted. The first city in Scripture is linked not to innocence but to murder. That does not mean cities are evil by definition. The Bible will later speak of Jerusalem, the city of God, and finally of a holy city descending from heaven. The problem is not cityness itself. The problem is that the first city in the biblical story emerges from a line in which estrangement from God has already taken deep hold. Civilization begins under a shadow. This tension runs through the whole Bible. Human beings build because they are image bearers. They order, shape, cultivate, and name because they were made for meaningful stewardship. But human beings also build as exiles. They build out of fear, memory, pride, grief, ambition, and the refusal to vanish. The city of Enoch is therefore not simply a triumph of progress, nor simply a sign of corruption. It is both more ordinary and more tragic than either modern admiration or modern suspicion allows. It is ordinary because people build, families grow, settlements form. History becomes geography. It is tragic because all of this happens east of Eden, without any suggestion that the deepest human problem has been resolved. Cain's city may answer wandering at one level, but it cannot answer the blood and the ground. This may help explain why Genesis does not pause to celebrate the city in glowing terms. It simply states the fact: Cain built, Cain named, then the genealogy continues. The restraint is deliberate. The Bible is not giving us a hymn to early urban development. It is pacing the first human city within a moral genealogy. That genealogy leads from Enoch to Irad, from Irad to Mehujael, from Mehujael to Methushel, and from Mehujael to Methushel, and from Methushel to Lamech. The names pass quickly, and we are given almost nothing about most of them. But then the line slows again at Lamech, and with him the story becomes clearer. Something has been growing in Cain's line, and it is not only culture. Lamech takes 2 wives, Ada and Zillah. Even before he speaks, the narrative suggests escalation. The original pattern of man and woman has been modified. Then his household becomes the source of remarkable developments. Jubal becomes the father of those who dwell in tents and have livestock. Jubal becomes the father of those who play the lyre and pipe. Tubal-Cain becomes the forger of instruments of bronze and iron. And Naamah is named, though without explanation. This is astonishing material. The line of Cain, which began in fratricide, now becomes associated with herding, music, and metalwork. Shelter, art, and technology emerge here. The Bible does not hide that fact. It does not pretend that those outside the line later emphasized through Seth contribute nothing to human history. On the contrary, Genesis openly credits Cain's descendants with major aspects of civilization. This is one of the most important correctives to simplistic readings. The biblical text does not divide the world into the spiritually serious on one side and the culturally productive on the other in any neat way. Cain's line is capable of innovation. It can shape the external world powerfully. It can generate beauty, utility, and technical skill. The image of God in fallen humanity has not been erased, but neither has sin been tamed. The city, then, must be read in the light of what comes next. It is not merely the beginning of settled life. It is the setting in which civilization and violence begin to mature together. Cain, the builder, is followed by Lamech, the boaster. The descendants who shape music and metal also belong to a house where vengeance becomes poetry. That is the sobering genius of Genesis 4. It will not let us romanticize either primitivism or progress. The world east of Eden is not simple. The first city is not a sign that humanity has solved its exile through architecture. It is a sign that humanity will continue to make worlds for itself while carrying unresolved guilt within those worlds. Cain's city stands at the beginning of that history. It is humanity's attempt to become settled after judgment, remembered after loss, and durable after bloodshed. But what kind of spirit will inhabit such a city? What moral music will play in its streets? What use will be made of the metal drawn into human hands? Genesis does not answer those questions abstractly. It answers them by showing us the next generation. Chapter 6, the line of Cain. When Genesis reaches the descendants of Cain, the pace seems to quicken and widen at the same time. The story moves beyond the isolated tragedy of one murder and begins to show what grows from a line already bent away from God. Yet what grows is not only corruption, it is culture. This is what gives the passage its unusual moral complexity. Jubal is said to be the father of those who dwell in tents and have livestock. Jubal is the father of those who play the lyre and pipe. Tubal-Cain is the forger of instruments of bronze and iron. These are not minor details. They form a compact portrait of mobile life, artistic expression and technical development. Pastoral economy, music and metallurgy all appear here, clustered inside Cain's line. The effect is striking. Genesis refuses the easy assumption that spiritual alienation always looks barren on the surface. Cain's descendants are not described as incapable, idle, or culturally empty. They are productive. They generate forms of life that will shape the human future. They bring sound into the world through instruments. They bring precision into the world through metal. They organize life in new ways. This should slow us down. Many readers instinctively want Genesis to reward the righteous with culture and punish the wicked with obvious decline. But the chapter is more realistic than that. Fallen humanity can build, compose, forge, and multiply. Human gifts remain active after Eden. The image of God still leaves its mark in intelligence, imagination, and skill. Civilization, in that sense, is not a denial of Genesis. It is part of the tragedy Genesis is willing to tell. For gifts do not heal the wound beneath them. The genealogy of Cain moves toward one of the darkest speeches in the early Bible, the Song of Lamech. He says to his wives, Ada and Zillah, "Hear my voice. He has killed a man for wounding him, a young man for striking him." And then he declares, if Cain's revenge is sevenfold, then Lamech's is 77-fold. This is where the line of Cain reveals its moral direction with terrible clarity. What was fearful and defensive in Cain becomes proud and expansive in Lamech. Cain feared being killed. Lamech boasts that he has killed. Cain received a protective limit from God. Lamech turns that memory into a magnified claim of violence. The number increases, but more importantly, the tone changes. The first murderer spoke under judgment. His descendant speaks like a man intoxicated with retaliation. This is one of the most important clues for reading the whole chapter. Genesis is not merely giving us scattered inventions and names, it is tracing the deepening of a pattern. Human power increases, human culture increases, human self-assertion increases, and violence, far from disappearing, becomes stylized. It enters speech, it becomes a kind of anthem. That should make us revisit Cain's city with clearer eyes. The problem was never brick and boundary alone. The problem was always the kind of heart that inhabits the structure. A city can preserve memory, labor, and community. It can also preserve pride, fear, vengeance, and the inheritance of blood. Genesis shows the beginnings of both without forcing them into separate worlds. This is also why the contrast at the end of Genesis 4 matters so much. After the line of Cain has been traced through Enoch and Lamech, the narrative returns to Adam and Eve. Adam knew his wife again, and she bore a son, and called his name Seth. For God has appointed for me another offspring instead of Abel, for Cain killed him. Then Seth has a son, Enoch. And at that time people began to call upon the name of the Lord. The contrast is not absolute in every possible sense, but it is deliberate. Cain's line has just been shown as culturally fruitful and morally unstable. Seth's line is introduced not through instruments or metal, but through worship. To call upon the name of the Lord is not merely to know about God. It is to invoke Him, seek Him, orient life toward Him. The juxtaposition is powerful. Genesis is not telling us that one line has culture and the other has God, as though those two realities could never meet. Rather, it is telling us where the center of each account lies. Cain's line is remembered for what it builds and for how its violence matures. Seth's line is remembered for renewed invocation of the Lord. One line embodies the restless unfolding of human civilization east of Eden. The other carries the thread that will matter for the redemptive story to come. And this helps us interpret the mystery surrounding Cain's wife and city more responsibly. The reason Genesis does not dwell on the woman's ancestry or the mechanics of city formation is not because those things are unimportant in every imaginable sense. It is because the chapter's deepest concern is the moral and theological shape of the world emerging from Cain. The wife is part of that continuation. The city is part of that continuation. The descendants are part of that continuation. The descendants are part of that continuation. The point is not merely that society exists. The point is what society becomes when it develops in the long shadow of fratricide and exile. That shadow does not erase all good. Music is still music. Craft is still craft. Livestock, tents, and tools are still real achievements of human stewardship. Yet none of them can answer the cry of Abel's blood. None of them can return Cain to the presence he left behind. None of them can reverse the curse by their own power. This is one of the enduring lessons of Genesis 4. Civilization is not redemption. Progress is not reconciliation. Skill is not innocence. Human beings can become more capable without becoming more whole. And that is perhaps why the chapter still feels so contemporary. We recognize this world. We know what it is to live in societies of astonishing creativity and unresolved violence. We know what it is for art and technology to flourish while envy, bloodshed, and pride continue underneath. Genesis, in its compressed ancient way, already sees that pattern at the beginning. The line of Cain therefore does more than answer the question of where people came from. It shows what people do once they are here. They build, they sing, they forge, they marry, they name, they retaliate, they remember, they boast, they pray, they divide. The human story becomes richer and darker at the same time, and now we are ready to return to the central silence itself. Why does Genesis leave so much unexplained? Why mention the wife, the land, the city, and the fear without resolving every question? The answer may be that the silence is part of the theology. It keeps our attention where the text wants it, and it prevents us from mistaking the story for a kind of ancient census report. Genesis does not leave us with emptiness. It leaves us with proportion. It tells enough to reveal the shape of the world, but not so much that we can avoid the deeper claim of the narrative. The issue is not only who populated Cain's world. The issue is what kind of world Cain helped populate. Chapter 7. What Genesis leaves unsaid. By the time we reach the end of Cain's story in Genesis 4, the questions that first drew us in are still present. Who were the people Cain feared? Where did his wife come from? What exactly was the city he built? But if we have read carefully, those questions now stand inside a larger frame. They are no longer detached curiosities. They belong to the theological world Genesis is constructing. So what can we say with confidence? We can say that Genesis presents Cain as a real figure in the earliest human story, the son of Adam and Eve, the killer of Abel, the recipient of divine judgment, and the bearer of a protective mark. We can say that he goes to a land called Nod east of Eden, takes a wife, fathers Enoch, and builds a city named after his son. We can say that his descendants are associated with livestock, music, and metalwork, and that the line culminates in Lamech's violent boast before the text turns towards Seth and the renewed calling on the name of the Lord. We can also say that Genesis does not explicitly identify Cain's wife, does not narrate the growth of the early human population in detail at this point, and does not explain the social makeup of Nod in the way many modern readers would prefer. Those omissions are real. They should not be denied or hidden, but neither should they be exaggerated into contradictions that the text itself seems unconcerned by. The traditional reading remains viable within the canonical framework. Genesis 5 states that Adam had other sons and daughters. That later notice leaves room for Cain's wife to come from the wider family of Adam and Eve, even if the narrative of Genesis 4 does not stop to say so. This reading has often been criticized as awkward, but awkward is not the same as impossible. The text permits it. Ancient interpretive traditions, especially in Jewish literature, often try to fill the silence with names and expanded genealogies. Those traditions show that the questions are ancient, not modern inventions, yet they remain interpretations. They can illuminate how earlier readers wrestled with the passage, but they do not replace the restraint of Genesis itself. The pre-Adamite theory, by contrast, should be handled with even greater caution. It offers an elegant solution to the practical puzzle by imagining human populations beyond Adam's household already present in the world. But elegance is not the same as textual certainty. The theory may explain the gaps some readers feel, yet it goes well beyond what Genesis says directly. At best, it is a possibility proposed by later interpreters, not a teaching securely established by the passage. In a way, this is precisely the point. Genesis does not ask us to solve the mystery at all costs. It asks us to read the mystery in the right proportion. The silence around Cain's wife and the city is secondary to the chapter's central burden. The story is about sin spreading beyond Eden, violence entering the family, judgment falling on the murderer, mercy restraining vengeance, and human culture developing east of God's immediate favor. That development is one of the great paradoxes of the chapter. Cain is cursed, yet he fathers children. Cain is a wanderer, yet he settles. Cain goes out from the presence of the Lord, yet he builds. His descendants create music and tools, even as their line gives us Lamech's intensification of violence. Nothing in the story is flat. Human beings remain capable of beauty and skill, but not capable of healing themselves by beauty and skill alone. The city of Cain therefore becomes a kind of symbol for all human life after Eden. We build because we were made to shape the world. We also build because we are afraid of disappearing. We name places because memory matters. We gather into settlements because wandering is hard. We create culture because the image of God still burns in fractured people. Yet every city made east of Eden is also touched by loss. No human construction can by itself reopen the garden. This is why the chapter's deepest tension is not demographic, but spiritual. The real mystery is not simply who were the others. The real mystery is how a judged and exiled humanity can continue at all. Why does God preserve Cain? Why allow the line to endure? Why permit civilization to grow from such damaged roots? The answer seems to be that God's purposes for humanity are larger than immediate destruction. Judgment is real, but so is patience. Blood cries from the ground, but vengeance is not given unlimited rule. Exile is severe, but history continues. The Bible does not tell the story of human survival because humanity deserves it. It tells the story because God, even in judgment, does not abandon the world to total collapse. That does not make Cain into a hero of misunderstood complexity. Genesis never softens the horror of what he has done. Abel's blood still speaks. The curse still stands. Cain still departs from the divine presence. But the chapter also refuses to reduce him to a single function. He is murderer, exile, husband, father, builder, ancestor. Scripture is often more severe and more humane than our preferred categories. It shows the full burden of a life rather than flattening a person into an emblem. And perhaps this is why the story remains so compelling. We come to it for an answer about Cain's wife, but we remain because the passage sees something enduring about the human condition. It knows that the world is morally wounded and yet culturally active. It knows that people can fear violence even after committing it. It knows that entire societies can grow out of unresolved guilt. It knows that art, industry, and settlement do not erase spiritual estrangement. Most of all, it knows that silence can teach. By leaving some questions unanswered, Genesis forces us to face the questions it considers greater. Not merely how the world was populated, but how the world was deformed. Not merely where Cain found a wife, but what kind of husband, father, and founder a murderer becomes when divine mercy prevents immediate destruction. Not merely how a city began, but what every city says about humanity's longing to settle in a world where rest has been lost. So in the end, the story of Cain does not invite us to choose between naive certainty and endless suspicion. It invites a steadier reading, one that honors the text we have, recognizes the limits of the text we have, and listens for the theological music beneath the silence. Cain's wife remains unnamed. The people he fears remain undescribed. Nod remains a place more suggestive than explained. The city of Enoch rises in a single line and then recedes into genealogy. These things are not accidents. They are part of a narrative that is less concerned with satisfying all historical curiosity than with revealing the shape of life outside Eden. And that shape is this: sin deepens, mercy restrains, culture grows, violence matures, worship persists, and the human story moves onward under God's watchful judgment. The chapter closes, not with Cain, but with Seth and Enoch, and with a quiet note that people began to call upon the name of the Lord. That final turn matters. It does not erase Cain's line, but it places beside it another orientation for human life. East of Eden, civilization is not the whole story. There is also invocation. There is remembrance of God. There is the beginning of a line through which the biblical story will continue to move. So perhaps the question is not only where Cain's wife came from, but what future each human line is trying to build. One can build cities, instruments, and tools and still live far from the presence once known. Another can begin, however faintly, to call on the name of the Lord. Genesis leaves us there, in that tension, with blood in the ground, a city in the distance and a human world just beginning to unfold.